Welcome to Yoga Teacher Journeys, your podcast for all things yoga and mindful living. I'm Claire.
And I'm Bianca, and we're two yoga teachers sharing the insights and wisdom we've picked up along our journey so far.
Whether you're thinking about teacher training or exploring yoga as a way of life, join us weekly for inspiring conversations.
Let's go on this journey together. Hello and welcome back. Episode number 10 we're on, Claire.
Number 10. How exciting. So amazing.
Loving it. So today we're going to be talking about what to expect from maybe it's your first yoga class or just a yoga class in general. And I mean, they're all so different, aren't they? So we'll try and be give a nice overview, and then we'll be a bit more specific with our classes so that you can see how different even just our classes are. And we trained at the same place.
Exactly.
Certain things I think that sometimes when you go into your first yoga class, you're like, what does this mean? Who's this? What's this? And it can feel a lot because there's a lot of words that could come up that you maybe have never heard before. So we just really wanted to give you just to kind of clear it up a little bit. This is kind of what you could expect. This is what you might see in a yoga class. It's not that scary. Come along. And sometimes it's nice if you understand what these words mean, you can feel a little bit more easy going into your first yoga class if you've never done one before.
Absolutely. And so I suppose if you are going to a yoga class in a yoga studio, typically the teacher might say to you when you arrive to grab a block or a strap or some props. That might sound completely strange to you. What are props? What are these things and what are they for? So I suppose one of the things I talk a lot about actually is that by using these props, you're able to adapt the practice to your body type. So in yoga, as we all have very different body types, body shapes, different alignments, we might need a little bit of help from what we call these props to get into the proper alignment of a certain pose, a certain asana, as we call them. And so blocks are kind of these, in the shape of a block of a brick. Effectively, you get some that are a little bit more soft and others that are harder types of blocks. And effectively, you use them in the practice. You might be able to sit on it. You can use it to help you balance, all sorts of different ways. Straps help you. So straps are like these long pieces of rope. Not even a rope. What would you call it?
It's just like a strap.
It's a strap. And you can put it around the balls of your feet to help you with any stretches. So especially when you're not as flexible, straps can be really helpful to bring that part of your body towards the other part. So for example, reaching for your toes with your hands, you might hold onto some straps. So yeah, that's another example there.
With props, I always think the blocks bring the floor up to you. And with the straps, it allows you to bring yourself closer to yourself. So that's body part to body part. Blocks bring the floor up. The straps bring you closer to yourself. I think that's a nice way to look at it. And I think take all the props, take all the straps, because top tip here as well. I think when I used to go to yoga classes, I used to be like, I don't need them. It's fine. But actually you're much better off using the prop and having a better alignment than not using the prop and for it to be a bit ugly, and you could do some damage.
Yeah, definitely.
Managing the ego as well. We can go into the ego in another podcast, but it's really interesting actually the people that don't want to use the props. It's kind of okay. What does it mean if you don't?
Exactly, and I think that sense of when you are new to yoga and you arrive into a class, you might very well be looking around you to look at what other people are doing. So you're making sure that you're doing the right thing. And that's absolutely fine, but you shouldn't really compare what they're doing to your practice because your practice is personal to you and the way your body moves is different to theirs. And so what you might find in a class is a teacher will give you different options for a specific pose. And don't feel like you need to be taking what is perceived as the most difficult or challenging option because that might not be suitable to your body type. That might be something that you can gradually work towards. It could be that on some days, even after practicing for over 10 years, I can get into that other variation, but other days I don't have the energy for it and I'm not getting into that variation. And that has zero reflection on how good, inverted commas, am I at yoga? And there is no such thing as being good at yoga or bad at yoga. It's just understanding how to leverage, for example, these props to make the practice work for you.
And it's making it accessible wherever you're at, whatever phase you're in, because every time you come on the mat will be different. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is take the lower intensity option, isn't it? Because your mind will be telling you that you should be going harder. But actually, in that practice of stepping back and actually being like, this is what I need today, you're actually really honoring yourself. And that is still yoga. That's actually way more beneficial for you than pushing yourself in a way that feels like punishment, you know? So
Absolutely.
yoga can happen in all ways. Everything that you practice on the mat, whether you're using straps, blocks, whatever. Yeah, it's really powerful actually. You can learn so much about yourself in this.
Yeah. Another top tip that I just literally came to mind is often when you're new to a class, you're very much more inclined to go to the very back of the class. But if you
Yes.
go to right at the back, you might not be able to see the teacher as well. So, as much as I wouldn't say necessarily you have to be front row, if that's a bit scary, definitely try to be more in the middle or second row so that you can still really see what's happening. And that's just something that I've noticed.
Yeah, and I would say every time you come into a yoga class, there is absolutely no judgment from the teacher ever, ever, ever. We went to a first yoga class one time. You know, we're still students as well. So we're all students together, really. It's just we've maybe practiced a downward facing dog a few more times than you have. That's all. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to think what else is there when you arrive into a space. You might find that there's some more calming music. People are trying to slow down, be a bit more calm. So perhaps avoiding any sort of intense conversations, or if you've met up with your friend at the class and you want to have a catch up, maybe not the best space to do that, and just try and bring the attention within, slow down, get into the space.
Yeah, and another thing as well, which could be handy, is some spaces have mats that you can use. Other spaces you have to bring your own mat. So just to have a little look for that as well. I would say most studios have mats that you can use there, which is really, really great. But yeah, I guess that's all in the kind of coming into the space, getting set up for the class. I mean, depending on what type of class you go to as well, to take water in. I went to a class the other day, we weren't allowed to drink water. And I think in Ashtanga, they mentioned you want to keep that fire in the body. So we don't drink water in Ashtanga. But every teacher that you go to, there'll be different kind of rules with those sort of guidelines. Let's call them guidelines, depending on the type of yoga. I would always say take some water with you, but if you're going to drink water, don't glug it down. Just take little sips throughout the practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Do take a little bit of water. Be mindful with it. The other thing that I notice a lot as well with some of my new students is remembering to take off your socks because you'll be sliding onto the mat. So,
Yeah.
yeah, take off your socks, but also have them handy or have any kind of jumpers handy towards the end because you like to cover up again when you get into Shavasana and you're slowing down the body and arriving at the end of the class. So, as you mentioned, there will be heat created in the body during the class typically. So there you'll need less sort of layers, but you want them close to you towards the end if you do get a little bit chilly, so you can focus on assimilating the practice rather than worrying about being cold.
Yeah. I think that's enough to what to bring to your first yoga class. Think of.
Yeah. There we go. So what about you? How do you structure your classes? What are your classes like?
So I teach Hatha and Vinyasa.
Mm.
My Vinyasa classes, I would say, are quite creative in the way that I combine like modern yoga with the philosophy with therapy. So for me, I have this kind of really, I suppose it almost like this unique combination of everything that I do in one space, which is really, really beautiful for rewiring the nervous system and rewiring the mind. Because I mean, sun salutations are great, right? But I think the body, if you're just doing the same thing all the time, the body gets used to it and it's not really challenging the mind or the nervous system. So I like to throw in little things just to get people, you have to really focus, right? If you're doing something that feels out of the norm, you have to really be in that space. And when you're in that space, it gets you more out of your head into your body and it allows that nervous system to come into that more rest and digest place. So for me, lately I've been starting with pranayama and then coming into meditation. But sometimes I will start with meditation, do the pranayama halfway through.
And just for people who don't know, pranayama is breath work, so different types of breathing techniques.
So yeah, prana means life force and yama means restraint. So like the restraint of breath restraint. So yeah, I always pranayama, always meditation, somewhere in there. Sometimes I mix it up. Sometimes I put it at the end, the pranayama at the end. So there's not really like a set structure as such. And I think that's also good for people that come to class because they don't know what's coming. And it mixes it up and it keeps it creative. So we'll do that. I do include some rounds of sun salutations at the start. So the sun salutations are the salute to the sun, the way in which we build heat in the body. And it's this heat in the body is meant to be that resonance with the sun. And every time we do this, we're saying thank you to the sun and we're connecting to that part. And I think it's a beautiful way just to feel a connection to more than yourself. And I always say when I'm doing the sun salutation, when your hands are facing forwards, it's about receiving the blessings. Because if you're all hunched over and your palms are back, you're never going to receive anything in life. So to receive things in life, your palms need to be open. You need to be open and ready to receive. And I think when we practice the sun salutation, it's really that reminder that when we build that heat in the body, we're connected. We can receive these things. And it shows you that you have that within you. I love a sun salutation. So I always do sun salutations. Then I'll probably come into a standing sequence. In the standing sequence, I'll make sure that I have some sort of balancing postures. And then we'll make our way down to the floor, do some sort of seated sequence. And then I slow it right down at the end. Sometimes I add some kind of more yin postures at the end before I come into Shavasana. So I kind of mix it up in that way. So yeah, that's kind of like the basics. What about you?
So my classes have obviously some similarities in terms of there is always the breath work, the pranayama. But what I do is I typically get people to arrive onto the mat, a little bit of centering, noticing the breaths, a bit of awareness there, some sort of meditative state at the beginning. Then we always get into the pranayama. I usually always have it at the beginning of the class. And then depending on the type of class, it will be maybe more activating or more restorative in that sense or calming. Then there'll be the warm-ups section. And yeah, we'll always go into some of the sun salutations. And really depending on the theme of the class or the energy in the room or the level of experience of the students, I will typically mix and match different types of sun salutations or go more slowly or at a faster pace, one movement, one breath, depending on that. And then we'll get into the standing sequence, into our balances as well. And we'll come down to the mat, as you mentioned, always making sure I've got a twist in there, whether it's within the standing sequence or coming down to the mat. And either I will work towards a peak pose. So that might be a wheel, for example, or camel, or it will be more just staying down onto the mat, different types of stretches. And then I do try, if I do have the time, to get some inversions in there as well. Yeah. And then slow it all back down, arriving into Shavasana. But I find that you do need all of those components in a class to really feel the benefits of the practice. And so as much as, for example, doing a 15-minute, a 20-minute video, let's say on YouTube, and also obviously it has benefits to your body. If you want the full benefits of a practice, you do need a little bit more time because to get through all of that, you need the time from your meditation, your breath work, your sun salutation, standing sequence, balancing, seated, twists, inversions, and Shavasana. You need time. And so that's how I look at a class.
Yeah. And for me, I'm quite fortunate in that my classes are an hour and 15 minutes. So I have time to fit all of that in. I really love an inversion as well. Like I do when it comes to the end and we're doing like back bends and inversions, I love that part. And quite a lot of my students now, we have worked up, they're doing headstands. So it's always really nice to come to the end. And the option is you can do shoulder stand or headstand, whatever's in your practice. And if that's not, more the legs up the wall kind of situation. Version postures, yeah, so important to finish the practice in that way. Do you finish your class with an om?
I do. I do now. Yes. So I also do that at the very end, an Om Shanti for sure. Yeah. I think it's a really nice way to finish the class. I always say that it's optional. People can either listen or take part. But I think just the resonance, the vibration, it just works really nicely in the space. Do you?
There's some classes that I do. And again, isn't it interesting? Because I guess it's how I feel. I read the energy in the room. So like
Yeah.
my Thursday morning classes that I cover always do an om.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's always that energy for the om, like I feel it. But then in some spaces, I'm like, no, maybe not. If there's quite a lot of people that, I don't know, if they're quite new to, but then it could be quite a nice thing for them to start with an om so that it's not something that you then throw on them in 5 weeks' time, you know? So I do like an om. Yeah.
You do love an Om. Yes. Yeah, there's something. And I think again, it's sprinkling different aspects of the practice that we enjoy and putting it into the class. And I think that's also what's so great is that every class can be so different coming from us, but also coming from different teachers. So you will find a class that works for you depending on your personality, but also perhaps where you're at in your life right now.
And I think what's really great is if when you can go into a yoga class just without any expectations, see if you can really just experience whatever you're going through, as in the journey of the practice, because every single teacher has their own spice. So quite often I cover classes and you can tell that there's some people like, well, you're not my usual teacher. No, I'm not. And I'm me, and I'm never going to be that other teacher. This is how I teach, and this is me, and just experience that. I think sometimes your mind might be like, well, my other teacher doesn't do it like this, or she doesn't. Everyone's different. So it's almost like making space for the differences with the teachers because you can learn something from everyone. So being open to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is also so important. I'm trying to think what else could there be in a class that might throw people off. Oh, there was one conversation I had with a friend about keeping your eyes closed in certain parts of the practice. And maybe at the beginning, when you're arriving in meditation, you might have your eyes closed. Sometimes during some of the breath work, you might close your eyes. In Shavasana, you might close your eyes. Or, yeah, perhaps other parts. And sometimes I noticed some people had their eyes open. And so my friend was telling me that actually sometimes it makes her feel quite dizzy to have her eyes closed. So it's also really good to say to someone, you can have your eyes closed or just a soft gaze ahead of you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, there's never any pressure. If something doesn't feel right for your body or you on that day, don't do it. Like we are just the guides. You don't have to do what we say. Your body knows best. You can listen to what we're saying, but if it doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Absolutely. And that also comes down to injuries. So a teacher might ask you at the beginning, do you have any injuries? And as much as we can give you some recommendations, I think it's very important for you to listen to your body because we're not in your body. We don't know the level of pain, the level of discomfort that you might be experiencing. And I think that's really important to listen. And also during the class, if you are finding something very challenging, you need to take a break. That's also fine. And just go into a child's pose, focus on the breath, and you're still practicing. It's your practice.
I think no effort is ever wasted. Yoga, everything is perfect as whatever happens on the mat is the journey for that day, and it's an experience, and it doesn't need to be good or bad, it just is. And I think that's another practice of yoga, isn't it? Definitely. I quite often throughout my classes, I will do like a check-in and I'll say to my students, where are you now? Where's your mind? And if you know
that
mind is really busy, can you bring yourself back to the sensations in the body or the breath as an anchor into this present moment? Because when you're in your mind, you're not really in your body. And when you're not in your body, you risk actually doing some damage. So yoga really, for me, is all about embodiment. And the more I can bring my students into their body, that's where the healing happens. Yeah, it's really
I love that. That's such a great thing to say. I might steal that one from you.
Yeah, so I say at the start of class, we'll sit down, do the grounding, come into meditation. And when there's about 30 seconds to go in meditation, I just say, where's your mind? Where are you now? Because if you're in your to-do list, or if you're in what you did earlier on in the day, you're not really here. And I appreciate that the mind sometimes is busy because there's maybe energies and things in the body that feel too uncomfortable to be with. But let's use this as an opportunity. This is a really, really safe space to start trying to connect with the breath, trying to connect with the sensations in the body. And I appreciate that some people have been through a lot in their lives. They're totally disconnected. So that's where, for me, having that trauma-based lens really comes in handy, because I can talk people through those things more systematically. Give it a try.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love that. That's so good.
The thing that I do often is at the start of class, I just check in with how are you feeling today? What's the energy levels like? And people will be like, the low energy, this, that, the other. And then throughout the practice, I'll read the room. And if we need to change something, we can. And I also say to these people, it's not about getting rid of how you're feeling. Yoga is about alchemizing that energy, right? So let's really be with this energy that's in the body. Again, it's not good or bad. Let's just accept where you are so it can move and flow if it needs to. Or maybe you can express it, or whatever needs to happen with that. We then check in at the end of the class. How are you feeling now compared to the start of the class? And just getting people to really connect, and also then show their body some gratitude for what it's done in the practice. I always like to finish with some gratitude. And I have this little piece do you have like a one-liner at the end that you say every time?
More or less, yeah.
I have this one-liner, which I find is quite powerful. I say it at the end of every single class, and I can really feel it landing for people. So I get people inhale, sweep the hands above the head, blink open the eyes, and then draw the hands to the heart. And then from here, we bring the thumbs onto the forehead to symbolize positive thoughts about self and about others. Then we bring the thumbs to the mouth to symbolize positive words spoken about self and about others. And then we bring the hands to the heart to symbolize the love that you must first give to yourself before you can give it to others. And that's exactly what you've done with your yoga class today. Because yoga really is it's a selfless practice in the fact that this is the best thing you can do for everybody that you love. Come to yoga, right? It really is a selfless practice. So the best thing you can do for everybody else is actually take care of you.
Yes, and I think
take care of you first. And if you're not,
I think that's so beautiful, and I think probably a really good way to end the episode.
The classes, there's so much to say, isn't there? We still need to go to each other's classes. We keep saying this. We'll make it happen at some point.
We will make it happen. It will be so special. Well, we were there for each other's first ever class. So we did experience that. Obviously, so much has changed now, and we're growing so much as teachers, which is so lovely and so exciting and so amazing. We're having this conversation. I didn't think I'd be having this type of conversation so soon. So that's really great. I hope that this has given everyone a better sense of what to expect when you come to a yoga class. Don't be scared. Don't be intimidated. It's a very safe space. Come join a class. We really couldn't emphasize that enough. It's something you can do for yourself, but obviously doing that for yourself is also for everyone else around you.
And I think if you've had an experience where you didn't really enjoy the class, go to a different one. Please.
Yeah.
Try it again, because yoga is for everyone. You have to just find a teacher that aligns to you. So yeah. And again, like you say, it's what to expect, but also try not to expect. Just turn up and see if you can just be and experience it, because it's really beautiful when you can.
Absolutely. So next time, really exciting, we're going to start to have some guests on the pod. We will wait to tell you who's our first guest, but TBC. But we are so excited to do that. And I think it will be great to bring another dimension into the conversations. Talk to some teachers who've been teaching for maybe 10 years or more. See what they have to say.
Yeah, love that. Awesome. Well, nice to speak to you, Claire. We'll chat more next week.
See you next time.